until we tumble down into the management. Good afternoon, everyone. It really is a pleasure. It's an honor, actually, for me to be here. In the interest of time, I'll just say good afternoon to all the distinguished ladies and gentlemen who are with us this afternoon. It really is a pleasure to celebrate Miss Lou and to celebrate Miss Lou 100. Yeah, isn't that amazing? So today I know we read about Miss Lou, we listen to Miss Lou, we're entertained by Miss Lou, but I just want to share with you a little bit on some of the research that I've done on Miss Lou's media work, and by extension her work in what is termed as development communication. So I'm going to be sharing the ways in which Miss Lou has helped us as a nation in terms of our national development. So one of the strategies that has served Jamaica's development efforts over the years is something we call entertainment education. And basically that involves the design of entertainment productions with strategically placed educational messages. The messages, of course, are geared towards increasing knowledge, changing attitudes, affecting social norms, changing behavior. And we talk a lot about that in Jamaica today. Oh, we reach us, oh, we see us. And a lot of that has been because we have stopped strategically trying to do the change that we need on a social level. So research identifies the use of entertainment education formats to convey development in various countries around the world since 1950s. Some of you might remember radio scriptwriter Elaine Perkins. Yes, so we're talking about Raymond the Sprayman, we're talking about Hopeful Village, we're talking about Stella, and we're talking about Dulcimina. Yes, to name a few. So we're listening to the entertainment content, but Perkins really was trying to meet a variety of educational goals. So Raymond the Sprayman was about mosquito eradication. Dulcimina was about rural to urban movement and migration. There were things about tourism, family planning, integrated rural development, social issues that were important to the middle class were among her areas of focus. Now, if you notice, I would say Elaine would talk about a specific issue which would relate to a specific period of time. Miss Lou had a commentary series, I don't know how many of you remember it, called Miss Lou's Views. Anybody remember Miss Lou's Views? Yes. And a lot of the content is what we read about in Mervyn Morris's Anti-Roche Say. So basically, the Miss Lou's Views, some of it is what he has in Anti-Roche Say. So while Elaine would address things at a specific time, specific issues, Miss Lou's program that ran for over 30 years would address issues that were not only specific to a period of time, but issues that would reoccur over and over again. Because you know, social issues happen over and over. Sometimes they happen in different ways. And so that was the dynamism of her work. And really, that's why I'm talking about it today. It addressed many issues, but one of the things I want to ground today's presentation in is the way in which Miss Lou helped to shape national identity. So just to give you a little bit of background, which many of you may or may not know, Miss Lou gained a scholarship to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in the UK. When she had finished completing her work, she did some work with the BBC. She was asked to stay in the UK as an actress, as a writer, but she chose to return to Jamaica. On her return, she engaged in teaching drama and folklore. Many may not know that she worked with the Women's Federation and later the Social Welfare Commission. So that gave her the opportunity to travel from community to community, parish to parish, meeting Jamaicans from all walks of life. And it exposed her to Jamaican experiences, and she documented a lot of that. So it uniquely positioned her as someone who was not only knowledgeable of Jamaican belief and practices, but she was also very aware of how issues affected the wider society and the attitudes that the public had towards them. So for Miss Lou, community was not just a place where learning happened. Community was the source of learning. Community figures heavily in all the work she does. So when she refers to people, some of the sociocultural references are, for example, the curmudgeon girl, the fool girl, no workers, and they're named because of their personality. Yeah. So from she said the fool girl, what you know about her? She fool, she don't understand. And you said the curmudgeon girl, one to her, she curmudgeon. So it's a way of writing that instead of trying to give an explanation, you say, you know, Jennifer has intellectual challenges. And by the time you finish describe Jennifer, I'm not so sure if you know what we really say about Jennifer. But in the Jamaican context, if you say she's a fool girl, you know where that's going. Alright. She used occupational, physical, and academic references. So the scientist was a big scientist. The little Mirazmi baby. The little run-nosed 14 boy. Them sort of big shot there. Because in Jamaica, when you say somebody's a big shot, you know what I mean, right? She also used familiar references, and we heard some of them in the performances. So, Tata Data. She not no name other than is Tata Data. Yeah. And it's not funny, you're going to a community and you look for somebody, and you say, hello, I'm trying to find Sophia Nicholson. And you said, I never really know Sophia. Yeah. And you said, Tata last data. And you said, oh, Tata last data. Because you know her to be Tata last data. I was telling a friend of mine that know that she has a child. I said, you know, I have my name in it. When you go to the school, they're going to say, Sister, one mother here. Because they won't know your name. So Master Joseph Tonfoot nephew, Jane Twistmouth girl, and Mona foreign travel brother are some of the ways she described them. She also inserts a lot of her own family connections. Everybody knows my Auntie Rochi, yes? And she talk about my grandmother and my cousin Wendy. So she puts a familiar face to the people that we hear about and we talk about in her work. She also does something very groundbreaking, and that is she uses folk media into mass media, and I'll explain that for you. So folk media is defined as, I'll give you the technical term, communication forms that are familiar to and accepted by common people for the purpose of entertaining, informing, enlightening, instructing, and educating. So those are songs, dramas, proverbs, storytelling, drumming, which are things that happen from community to community, house to house. But in this time in Jamaica, they were not things that would happen on radio. No. You listen to radio, mass media and radio was not about folk media. So the fact that Miss Lou was able to move something that they felt belonged in one space into the mass space was very groundbreaking, and that happens across the world today, still, by the way. The fact that she uses them is not novel. Public planners and media scholars have been using them for years, but it's the application of it to traditional social commentary that makes her distinct. So as a producer, presenter, and performer, she utilized these forms to full effect, and through local dialect and folk media, articulated the experiences of the masses. She reinforced behavioral messages. It would aid in the recall of messages and to strengthen argument. So I'll give you an example. Storytelling. So narrative poetry is another form of storytelling. And the only thing that differentiates it is its consistent rhyming pattern. So she has an incident with Sue, and this is about, she's talking about employment, Labor Day work. And she's saying if we did put more labor into Labor Day, people would be more willing to work.
and that we should put more into the quality of work than the quality of the clothes that we wear at work. Because people therefore want to work at bank and they want a lawyer because of how that looks. But even though you have the skill to do other things, I don't want to do things there because they work there, they look like work. So she's giving an example of Sue. So Sue come away and a crying. So she lose her job as nurse. She not got nowhere to sleep or only 4 bits in her purse. Me take her in, buy some food kind, and load my basket well. And carry her street with me next day to learn her how to sell. Me start to call out, Aki, here, right now. Me have breadfruit. Hear the girl back at me. Me too, me too, me too. And so she describes the whole experience of trying to teach Sue. But Sue is a nurse. And ignorant. Sue said, look here, I don't like ignorant. But the lesson she's trying to teach Sue is that you lose your house, you don't live nowhere. Do what you have to do till you can do what you want to do. So all of that, she eventually runs through because she said, when you're there, I said, me too, people are going to take me and sell you. So at the end of the day, she says, when we catch home, Sue was singing loud and really looking glad. Me stand up speechless. For the girl basket stone empty. Me open my mouth when I see her tread bag full up of money. Hear her to me. I call out, ma, do I don't like ignorant? Before me tumble down, me old maca, so I sell off everything. So it's an interesting way because we laugh at Sue. We're entertained by the story, but at the end of the day, we learn that you have to hold the maca before you tumble down, yes? You have to do what you have to do. So rhyming also coaxes audiences into anticipating line endings. So every time you hear somebody rhyme, you almost can tell where it's going to end. Because if I say flying, running, jumping, cook, right. So you're listening to what I'm saying because you want to join when I say in, right? So she uses the rhyme to reinforce messages about savings. And at the end of her episode on Consumer Economic Program, she says, curb your wanty ways, save your wanty money for the needy days. So, wanty ways, needy days is something that not only in retaining the message, it's easier to recall because it has the right ending. So the beauty of that is that even long after you've listened to the program and you've gone about your business, you're still recalling what was said because the rhyme makes it easier to retain and easier to recall. So the dialogue about saving is something that goes on and on. Songs function in a similar manner in her work. She has a song about education. So she uses rhyme and repetition to emphasize the arguments presented in the episode. So the first verse outlines the level of security that education has to offer as opposed to any other kind of material asset. So she says, me full up my purse with money, them teeth it away from me. Me full up my belly with food, and as me sneeze, me feel hungry. Me full up my brain with learning, with sense and knowledge grant. Me feel relief, not a thief can thief me education. So in that simple verse, she has taught us that all the material things that we try to acquire or we put a priority on are fleeting. And that the only thing, once you have it, is secure, is education. So the opportunities that education will provide are affirmed in the second verse, while the third verse offers examples of ordinary folk who may benefit from the initiative. Now, she wrote this when free education was just announced in Jamaica. So she was encouraging Jamaicans to take advantage of what it was, because she says, someone who feel like education is beyond me, that's not for me, because for years, that's how it was. You may never have the money. I wouldn't even dream about being educated, because where I am from, that will never happen for me. So she says, Master Joseph Tonfoot nephew, Jane Twistmount gal IT, taught her daughter a study for university. Them countenance not handsome, them station is not grand, them clothes is a wreck, but them brain can take the education. And she anchors each verse with the chorus. Sing together, studyration, education. If you're bright, then you got the right to education. The very first verse, or line of the chorus, invites the listener to participate. So she says, sing together, studyration, so everybody jump in, education. If you're bright, then you got the right to education, which is a unique thing about radio, because most people think that radio is just a listening medium. So you talk, people listen. Miss Lou invited interaction. And so it allowed the listener to feel as though they were an active part of this discussion. So the ability to take part, joining in each time in the chorus, not only captured the audience's attention, but it increased their level of investment in the program. They might wait for the chorus to come around so they can sing the chorus as well. So you're listening to the verses because this is your song. Now, while they may not recall each verse, the chorus is easily remembered. And given that it captures the main points, the message is prolonged. We heard about Proverbs. Proverbs are the most consistently used form of folk media in all of her work. So she says, listen up, and this is in the episode, Jamaica Philosophy. My auntie Roche said that Jamaica people have a whole heap of culture and tradition and birthright that hand down to them from generation to generation. All like the great philosophy of which Jamaica Proverbs there. Well, sir, as she could have said the word philosophy, sir, one feisty girl, what kind of girl? Feisty. Then called mochies. Girl said, as was a fool in Miss Roach's sheet chat. Oh, you could have put a decent word like philosophy with the old Jama bad talk in Proverbs then. See her? Auntie Roach never make fun for the Lego tongue emojis. She said, when goat love, everybody find out say he not got no teeth. That means some people should have keep silent to hide their ignorance. And so for the whole episode, she put muches in her place, you see, with the Proverbs then. She said, no stranger job won't and the word philosophy when you don't know what it means. Dictionary said that philosophy means the general principles governing thoughts and conducts, a study of human morals and character. So, if you follow the philosophy of the Jamaican Proverbs, you would have noticed that when you got jackass, you're not to chat about big ears. Don't offend people when you are in their domain. So you shouldn't come on me and come call me fool. She muches at big telling off. So the whole episode, she says the Proverbs and then she explains the philosophy behind them. And in doing that, it's a powerful corrective to Eurocentric assumptions that Patois is less of a language than English, or that our Proverbs are less than any other kinds of ways of teaching that anyone has. She takes advantage of the formative research gathered during her social work with the communities. As I said earlier, she moved from place to place. So Miss Lou knew the people of Jamaica. She understood how they operated. She knew what the social issues were. Nowadays they call it a KAPD study, knowledge, attitude, perceptions, and behavior. So people go and do a survey, and they're going to give you data, and they're going to tell you that people do this, people do that, and this is why Miss Lou walked from person to person and collected her data. So the content is based on this research, and her behavior change messages are influenced by sociocultural factors. So clearly the use of folk media in itself signals a cultural change, as it does the use of patois in mass media. And in reinforcing the voice of the working class, Ms. Lou's views encourages them to become actively involved in national dialogue regarding issues of relevance to them. Discourse is no longer out of their reach. They are allowed to interact and to contribute effectively. So when we're talking about matters like budget and so on, and people say, I don't understand when they talk about that, that fly over my head. But it can't fly over your head because you're a citizen of the country. And so you should be able to understand it and make some kind of contribution to the way crime and violence and education and health, because development is development if people are not at the center. And so Ms. Lou provided the opportunity for people to be at the center. The program's ability to attract and sustain audience attention, 30 years on radio, a stellar achievement, is achieved through discursive practices that are present in the content. Every episode starts with listener, so she's telling you, come here, it's a call to action. So she don't just start out, she said listener, so it motivates you to want to hear. And we have that little thing where we say, come here, I have something to tell you. We don't just start and say, we're going to go and listen one man, because people them might walk believe you. When you come and you say, come here, we have something to tell you, it invokes a different kind of listening experience, because if you have something to tell me, you're going to start doing me and you don't come and want to hear what you have to tell me. So when she said, listen up, the listeners knew something was coming. So that's the call to attention, and then that acknowledges the role of the audience as an active player in the communication process. She not just go on radio and tell her story, who want to hear, who not hear. She knows that being on radio is not just about pushing the message out, it must be about who is receiving it. So as mass education, she was not only effective in influencing change because of her knowledge and authority on sociocultural issues, but her use of language and folk media also made her relatable. When I was doing the research, I spoke with Alan Redgard, and he was the programs manager who put Miss Lou on radio. So when I asked him, I said, how Miss Lou reached on radio? One of the primary things is he said Miss Lou was immensely popular. So he knew once he put her on radio, people would listen. But who do they think was going to listen is a different argument. Miss Lou's views came on at midday. At midday was lunchtime. And it was lunchtime for the farmers in Jamaica, who they felt were the largest number of listeners to radio. So already they put the program in a certain demographic of people. So I'm putting her on as entertainment for the farmers. So if you listen to the program, it was sponsored by the Jamaica Agricultural Society. And so Miss Lou's Views brought to you by, and they would put a little message in the program. So before she starts, she would have said, listen now, Jamaica Agricultural Society said they must sell pig, feed, shilling and some currency women don't even can tell them. But that is what they thought. The context of the show was about. What Miss Lou did with that time on radio, I know, because when I talk about this research to a lot of people, it seems almost out of the box to them, because we see Miss Lou as entertainment, but we rarely see the national development strategies that she employed during the program. So this is why she was on radio, or put on radio, but she really used it as an opportunity to develop Jamaica. Yes. So this also extends to Auntie Rochi, and Miss Norma did a great job of it. Auntie Rochi, she used as the voice of public opinion, as the voice of common sense. Her wisdom underscored frequently by reference to Jamaican proverbs. She's the character through whom most of the social and behavior change messages are delivered. Now, everybody, respect Auntie. Yes. And when Auntie says so, I saw it go. And so she used Auntie Rochi as the figure to say, I saw you for the things, or if you do it, me never like I saw you do it. Because we would all listen to the wisdom of Auntie Rochi. Auntie Rochi was also the person who, you always have a person in the community that you say, make them go talk on behalf of us. Because they have this speech to speech. So that's Auntie Rochi. She understands what we want to say, and she will pretty young for them understand it. And likewise, she understands what they must say, and she will break it down so we know what they want to talk about. And so Auntie Rochi, as that figure, was very seminal in what she did. So it wasn't just about entertainment, there was a lot of activism in Miss Lou. Her use of patois was not passive, but actually helped to shape the society, the way we see ourselves, the way we interact with others, how we conform to social rules and norms. You can imagine you're hearing patois on a radio station that normally sounds very European to us. So as the language of folk media, patois endears the audience to what is being presented because it reflects their culture and their narrative. As she points out, the nature of dialect is almost the nature of comedy. And comedy helped to establish the ground for dramatic presentations in Jamaica by providing the bridge between the elite and the folk, unifying them across racial and class boundaries. So everybody loves Oliver Sanders. It doesn't matter if you're uptown, downtown, rural, urban. Everybody loves Miss Lou because comedy is the thing that unifies us and breaks barriers. So it may also have assisted in legitimizing patois, because if comedy resonates with the collective, then the language of comedy would also be significant to them. So it served as a useful resource in development communication, as it didn't only facilitate the articulation of issues in a manner that connects across the interpersonal, the community, and the national levels, it also advanced social cohesion. It's comedy's engagement with the human condition that frames it as being corrective or punitive in character. And the popularity of Miss Lou's views relied heavily on the value of its comedic content to its listeners. Cathy Warren-Chattu, who is a director for the Center for Media and Social Impact, underscores comedy's potential to influence audience behavior. And she has 5 approaches, and I'm going to quickly just run through them for you. So one of them, she says, the use of humor contributes to message retention and deepens the listener's understanding of the messages being conveyed. So we all laugh at Sue and her Hillary, and be quite funny, everybody wants to share a joke. All of we can't tell joke, Sometimes we say, me don't give one joke. I don't know if you have a laugh, but me don't give one joke. Not true. I say, me hear one joke today, I don't know if you're going to find it funny, but me going to tell you. So So comedy is one of the things that we like to share. And so the message is not only retained. If we see everybody, we are sharing this message, and that is how ideas begin to move from person to person, community to community. So Sue's attempts to higgle, even though pretentious, it engages our ability to visualize. Because when we talk about Sue, we don't really know somebody will come in like Sue. Yes. Everybody knows somebody will come in like Sue. So when you hear the story about Sue, not only are you listening, but it heightens your ability to actually see and feel what is happening. And that's an important part of radio. That listeners can translate what's happening towards their own situation. So humor is critical to how the message is returned. It's also easier for people to process difficult issues with humor. We have a thing in Jamaica where we say we take kin teeth, keep a hard bone. So there's an episode about class and color, and that's something even in the United States, that's a hot item when people talk about class and color. So she has an episode and she says, a Jamaican woman ring up the Jamaica restaurant to complain about the presence of a natty roll-up mega ear in her food. Now, Miss Lou suggests that the woman, she says, so what that mean? If it was a nice straight blonde ear, should I eat it? So the point is absolutely absurd. Now, clearly the woman not going to eat any kind of ear. But the fact that she would say, so if it is nice straight and blonde ear that eat it, allows you, as you did a while ago, to laugh at a very contentious issue, which is the issue of colorism, which makes it a little less hostile in the way you process it. So the severity of the behavior remains apparent, but humor allows you to process with a less disapproving evaluation. You know the characters. Many of you are the characters themselves. So if she was too judgmental, then people would detach from the message instead of focusing on the behavior itself. Humor also brightens the otherwise very serious dialogue. All of our episodes have a main narrative, but humor is laced, and it doesn't diminish the significance of the issue. She says the gal about leveling, so she calls gal because she's talking about doing the things that you have to do to get where you want to go. And she says, gal, you know what I'm talking about because you lent me a skirt to catch the attention of more than foreign travel radar. The way she reprimands Moches about calling Proverbs foolishness. So we like the way how she dressed her down because who is Moches to cuss Proverbs? But at the end of it, we're listening less rigid conditions. She's not sending me to go cuss nobody or to go fight nobody. She's sending you to change the behavior, but to change the behavior in an amicable way. So it's less didactic. She's not preaching at you and saying, you must do this, you must do that. She's teaching you and you don't even realize that you're learning a lesson. So awareness takes a more inclusive approach. She also reduces the way audiences scrutinize and counter-argue against the information presented. And a lot of that happens today on social media. If you say A, somebody will say, but B, and but C. So we've already established humor creates an environment which is conducive to positive reception. But she also says a lot of what she does through observations about human responses.